So you can see the whiteboard in the background here. The running joke with me and around our household is that my last name, Kursker, is German for whiteboard. It's really not. But I have whiteboards everywhere. I'm in my kitchen right now. Here's one whiteboard. Let's see if I can do the other. Yeah, back in the corner there, you can see there's another whiteboard. It's the way I kind of keep track of my task lists and stuff that's going on, and kind of keep my thoughts straight for a whole bunch of projects when I'm doing a lot of things at the same time. And I always seem to be doing a lot of things at the same time. So that leads us into the icebreaker question for you for today. What kind of reminders do you have in your life? Calendars, tasks, what do you have in your life that you use as reminders so you don't forget something, so that you keep those priorities straight? Talk about that with your group, and when you're ready to dive into the scriptures, you can go ahead and press play to continue. Of course, it's Christmas time, and so there are plenty of reminders around that point us to the reason for the season. We have a lot of things that point us to other places as well, but this is one of my favorites here. One of the reminders that we have in our home. It's a portrait that my daughter actually drew, reminding us of the birth of Christ. And we have other reminders around the house as well. And around Christmas time, it's so easy to look at reminders that are, what do I want to say? Reminders that kind of make it, pretty and blissful. And even when we sing things like, joy to the world, the Lord has come, let earth receive her king, we end up thinking about a baby and a manger and a nice, pretty picture, kind of like the one behind me, and we've got a lamb right there, and I don't know, we're ready for a silent night and a beautiful scene as we think about the birth of this baby, of Jesus. But when the prophecies about the Savior were given, the context, the situation was very different. Isaiah, for example, wrote in a day when the Israelites were falling apart. They had a kingdom with kings, and it started with Saul, moved on to David, and then finished up with Solomon. But after that, the kingdoms split. And then the north and the south, they didn't walk with God. The north especially fell right away. They started going after other gods, and because of that, God sent in a nation, the Assyrians, to attack them, to defeat them in war. And the ones that did live, the remnant, the little bit left over, they were taken into captivity. And it's during this time that the prophet Isaiah is sharing a message with the survivors, as well as, I'm sure the word got to the southern kingdom, to the ones who were left down there too, that God was not done yet, and that just because they were defeated in war and taken into captivity, that God still had a plan, that God was going to be sending a king who would reign on David's throne at some point in the future, and he would bring peace to all nations. Go ahead and read those passages that I gave you there from Isaiah. Those are just a few of the prophecies that pointed to Jesus in the middle of this time where things were just not good at all. And just talk about those passages and talk about that timeline that back then. What strikes you the most about these passages, and strikes you most about the prophecies, some of which we sing in our hymns and in our Christmas carols? What strikes you most about those? especially considering that the message was originally given to people who were being defeated in war. Talk about that with your group. When you're ready to continue, go ahead and press play. So here's another reminder of the reason for the season. This is a nativity set that we have, and we've had for really quite a while in our family since Joshua was a toddler, and it's just another reminder for us. You'll notice that baby Jesus is not yet there. It's a tradition in our family that we don't put baby Jesus in there until Christmas Day as a reminder that it's about Jesus' birth. And so we have lots of these reminders around our house as just to keep pointing us to the reality of the birth of this baby, and what a blessing it is to have Jesus come into the world for us. Well, as you move forward in these prophecies that point to Jesus, the next set that you have are they are from Jeremiah the prophet, and he lived in a time a little bit later than Isaiah. The north has already fallen; the kingdom is already split, and the south, the southern kingdom, Judah, they held out for a chunk longer. They did well. They walked with God. They had Jerusalem in the south, and so they could worship at the temple the way God told them to with Moses. And so they kept their focus, and they did it well for quite a while. But eventually, they started getting bad kings, and they started to stray from their walk with God. They lost their focus, and eventually they stopped walking with God completely, and so God sent the Babylonian Empire down to defeat them in battle, and the ones that were left, the remnants, were taken into captivity. And at that point, all of Israel was gone. All of the promises to God's chosen people seemed to have fallen apart. There was no king, there was no kingdom, there's no temple, there is no worship of the Lord. And so it was just a time of great defeat and just oppression for God's chosen people, the Israelites. It's in the midst of this that Jeremiah comes and brings another reminder that God is not done yet, that God still has God's plan, and that plan is being worked out throughout the ages and will happen in the future, that God will send his king, the one who will bring peace on earth and goodwill toward men. Read those passages and just talk about that a little bit. Why would those prophecies that you read there in Jeremiah, and that's just a sample, but why would those be important to Israelites who have been defeated and everything is gone? Why would it be important for them to hear those reminders, those prophecies from God? And then also talk about not just the Jeremiah ones, but the Isaiah ones, all of them. Are they important to you? And why are these prophecies, these reminders important to you? Talk about that with your group and press play when you're ready to continue. When the North and the South were completely defeated, they were the ones that lived were taken into captivity. And even during that time of captivity, that Babylonian captivity, the Israelites had prophets that were sent to them. Prophets like Daniel, you may know of him, Daniel in the lion's den, and Ezekiel, who was a well-known prophet. And during this time of captivity, when all hope really seems to be lost, God continues to remind them that God is not done, that God has more that God is doing. And so God prepares them for the one, the anointed one, who will come. There are a lot more good prophecies during this time period pointing to Jesus, reminding us of the real reason for the season. But I just gave you one more from Ezekiel to kind of finish up your night. And I included it because on the morning or the night where Jesus was born, we have the story that reminds us that there were shepherds that were tending their sheep that night, and they got to see an angel of the Lord that came to them. Angels, lots of them actually, and they heard their own message that night. And because of that, they were able to go and see the one that God had prophesied about, that baby in a manger. Ezekiel talks about this one, who we now know as Jesus, as being a shepherd. And so read the passage as you're preparing for Christmas, and just talk about that idea of a shepherd. And do you allow Jesus to be your shepherd? And what does that mean? What does that look like to be a shepherd and to allow God to be your shepherd, to allow Jesus to be your shepherd? When you're done talking about all of that, pray for one another and lift each other up before Jesus, the shepherd of our souls, keeping him at the center of this season. God bless.